everyone. This is Kathy Mason from MasonWorks Marketing here on Conscious Business Zone. Today with my friend Kelvin Chin.
See you again.
Yeah. Okay. So, Kelvin, I want to let everyone know how amazing Kelvin is. He has 3 nonprofits. He was a lawyer, so that's probably how he figured out how to do the nonprofits. And he is an expert on helping people get through difficulties for after death, after the pain, suffering suffering in general. Okay, let's start that over. Kelvin teaches a meditation class that teaches you how to release all the energies and anxieties you have that's causing yourself suffering. Then he also teaches an afterlife class that we're going to be talking about today. And he also teaches about what's the third thing?
I would say, just helping people with specifically overcoming the fear of death.
Okay.
So that's probably what that's the unusual thing that I do that most people don't do specifically. Right. Yeah. Right.
Right. And this is the perfect time for people to have this experience with you, because this has been a 2-year stint of constant, unrelenting fear and unrelenting reassessment about what's important to you. There's been a lot of people that had to change a lot of things about their life, about the way they did business, about who they spent time with, travel, all sort of lifestyle changes. So this is the perfect time. I got to take the meditation class, you guys, and I can't recommend that enough. It was magical. And Kelvin's been teaching meditation for 40 years or more.
Yeah, it's pretty. Next year, I'm going to have to start saying 50 because it's 49. It's like,
oh my gosh. Anyway, well, I love this experience. I was so excited to have you on and to get to talk to you. I mean, I get to talk to you anyway, but I just love everything you do, and I see you as a very powerful resource for this audience as we go through these huge changes. I mean, everything's in change. And, we stood in line to get these bodies to be here right now, but man, we could use some help with navigating it. So Kelvin, do you want to start with how you got interested in this? You had a near-death experience, right?
Yeah, I think that I did have a near-death experience in 1972. So I was 21 years old, and I almost drowned. That was my first brush, we'll call it, a brush with death, physical, biological death myself. Obviously, we all kind of grow up and you have an aunt or an uncle or a grandparent or somebody who dies. And God forbid, some people I help have had children who've died as well. In other words, people who are younger than you are. But in my life, I'd only fortunately had older people die. So it was just, we'd go to funerals, that kind of thing. So I really didn't think much about it. Then I had a brush with death and I almost drowned. And then about 10 years later, my mom died. And so those are the 2 watershed moments in my life, because I was so close to my mom, obviously, when she died. And it was really, it shook me up. So that's what got me thinking about this whole death and dying thing much more explicitly. Do you want me to describe the NDE?
Well, I think what I was hoping is that here I'll come back on. What I was hoping is that you would set the stage that you are an experiencer, basically.
Yes.
You're an experiencer of consciousness because of your meditation. We'll talk about that.
Yep.
So, you know, to frame it so that this isn't somebody who read a bunch of books.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. That's the thing. So people, it's interesting you say that last point, because people will say, hey, have you read so-and-so's book about reincarnation? I go, well, actually, you know, I have had so many experiences about my own reincarnations over the last 40, 50 years. You know, so all of my teaching, most of my teaching, it's not that I don't read any books, but most of my teaching, as you're kind of alluding to, is based on my own personal experience.
Right.
And I started when I was 19 years old meditating, and I've been teaching it for almost 50 years now, thousands of people. And then so experientially through meditation, and then spontaneously, we'll get into this more in our discussion, but spontaneously about 7 years into my meditation career, if you want to think about it that way, meditating, how long I've been meditating, my reincarnation memories just spontaneously opened up. And then about 10 years later, in the mid 1980s, I spontaneously started experiencing communications with the other side. And so it was dead loved ones. It was people who I didn't know. It was beings who were never been incarnated in physical form before. It was a whole mishmash starting in 1986. So all of that has continued to present. So as you say, as you allude to, it's experientially based, but I am a rational thinker. I come from a science background. I don't come from a spiritual background. The reason I got into meditation was not because of spirituality. I didn't know what spirituality was. I went to Sunday school. I was forced to go to Sunday school. I'm teasing my parents now. Teasing you. They're on the other side. I'm teasing you guys now. I was forced by my parents to go to Sunday school, Protestant church every Sunday. But I never really paid much attention to it. So I wasn't really a religious or spiritually oriented person. I was science guy. I was pre-med and so forth and all that. But I got into meditation because of my personal anxiety. But my spiritual side opened up just spontaneously, in the mid 1970s. And then I started going, what's that? So I didn't think of it as spirituality. I thought of it as, what the heck just happened? So,
well, and that's why I think I love learning from you, because it's so real. This isn't someone, and you're not really, you're professorial, but you're not. I mean, you're sharing, but it's really from the heart, number one, which is the way I like to roll here. And number two, it's really about being love. What you're doing is you're taking people, whatever you've been doing, including your books and everything you do, it's about the journey to love, which is who you really are. So that's why I think you're such a resource for this group, because everyone in this group wants to be a conscious conduit for change. And we have nothing else to hold on to. I mean, if we don't fortify the inner world and our inner playground, we don't really have much else right now.
Yeah, that's why I call the meditation class that you took Turning Within. We have to turn within to strength. It has to be the inside out approach. That's another way of saying the same thing. Inside out, strengthen ourselves from the inside. Then we can be stronger on the outside. But to your point about love, the definition that I use of love is what I remember from Jesus. His definition of love is to accept the other person for who they are, not who you wish they were, or self-reflective, to accept ourselves for who we are, not who we wish we were.
Right.
Acceptance is really how he taught us about love. And the thing is, it's not to say that we don't improve ourselves or we don't want others around us, our loved ones, our children, our friends, and so forth, to improve themselves, but they have to want to. That's the thing. And now, can we influence? Can we help people? Yes. I'm a teacher. I help people, like you say, but I'm not a guru. I do not want followers. I do not want blind followers. So in my teaching, and we'll talk more about this in our session today about the Afterlife series that I teach, the first thing that I say in that six-part series is I'm going to share with you my experiences, but they're my experiences. And I'm going to give you those why as data points for you to think about and so forth. But I want to help encourage you, and I'm going to give you breadcrumbs and teaching points and tips to hopefully help you unfold yourselves. I'm saying this
Right.
to all my
Of
students.
course. It's
You know,
all about
yeah,
self-empowerment. Yes. And
yeah.
that's what I love about what you're doing. So Kiara Winwriter, one of my dear friends, is on, and
Mm,
he's watching from India. And
mm,
he says, hello, such an important theme and especially relevant in these times. And then he says, love is to accept ourselves and each other as we are, not as we wish us to be. So true.
yes, exactly.
So you would love Kiara.
Yeah,
He's amazing. He stayed at my house before.
yeah,
He's a wonderful teacher too. But basically, well, both of you embody the work. It's not, it's not, it's not the guru student or little grasshopper, that whole paradigm
yeah,
is, I think it's gone. I think it's not sustainable, because what happens is when I see energy in a room like that, people get very high off of the central person's energy, but they can't maintain it. And it
yeah,
almost seems like a vampire, energy vampire to
yeah.
me. So
Mm,
so anytime I see that, it's like I'm not I'm not interested in that. I am interested in helping as many people wake up to their divinity as possible, which is exactly what you're doing.
mhm.
And let's talk a little bit about, again, your story, because
Sure.
you put together these three nonprofits and
Mhm.
you're very generous with how you allow people to come in. You also let us know when you're practicing with new people so we can keep practicing with you at no charge. Um, how did you decide? At one point, did you decide that that was what you wanted to do as far as in the way to disseminate this information?
Yeah, so we'll go back a little bit before that. So when I was in the legal profession and working in law firms and helping people, helping manage firms, law firms as well, near the end of my career, people would ask me at some of these legal receptions, like, "What would you really like?" Because most lawyers, really, a lot of lawyers, a lot of lawyers don't like being lawyers, but they do it, and they kind of, it helps them support their families and so forth. Um, And so, sometimes I'd be sitting around at these receptions and say, "What would you really like to be doing, Kelvin?" Instead of this. And I'd say, "Well, I don't know. I think I'd like to be helping people with death and dying." And I didn't know what that meant. This was 30 years ago. Okay. I'm like, what's that look like? I had no idea. But then about 8 or 10 years ago, I started, was it 6 or 8 years ago, I started these nonprofits. When it was 2014, I started thinking about it. 2013, 2014, I think we actually incorporated the nonprofits in 2014 or 2015. And and I wanted to do it around the work that I love to do, which is the teaching of the meditation, which I've been doing for many, many decades, and then the helping people with overcoming the fear of death, which I've been doing since the 1980s. Um, and so that, and then the spiritual work, which is kind of encompasses everything. Those are my three nonprofit areas. And so I created, one nonprofit that has these three components underneath it. Um, and I did it that way because I wanted to do it in a way that would be most helpful to people around the world. Because, as you know, I turn nobody away for financial reasons. So there are fees to my various classes that I teach, but people can pay over time and this and that. But some people can't pay the fee. And I'm up to 57 countries now, Kathy. It's so crazy. 57 countries. So I teach like this on Zoom or online. And even before Zoom existed, I was teaching, using 1-800 phone number, like people would call in, and I do conference call classes since the early 2000s with people. Even while I was still at the law firms, I was doing this on the side. And the point is that uh, not everybody in the world has a US based income. Let's just call a spade here. So
Yeah.
I'm teaching people in Bangladesh who make $10,000 or $20,000 a year. I'm teaching people in Sudan, in Ethiopia, and maybe they're making $4,000 or $5,000 a year. So I'm not charging them my US fees, but they'll pay something, make a donation to the foundation, to my nonprofit, and it'll be a sign of commitment to them in whatever their economy can, in their personal, quite frankly, budget can afford. Because even the US, I've taught veterans and so forth coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan and so forth, and who don't have jobs. So I'll teach them, and whatever. So I help people, and it's all, I've structured it that way for that reason.
Well, I think that's fabulous. And I'm really hoping that people understand the power of this, that this isn't another class. I mean, it seems like I get notifications for classes from the Shift Network and Humanities Team. I get them almost daily. Greg Braden. I mean, I'm on everybody's list, and not to say that those aren't valuable, but what this is holistic. What you're offering is a viewpoint of this reality that makes sense. You've created some sort of structure to it, that if you're left brain, you get it. If you're right brain, you get it. And if you want the path to your heart, there's a path to your heart. And that's where I just think it's so valuable, because there is so much stuff out there that people pick up and then parrot. And I've done that too. Although I hopefully am parroting something I've tested in my system first, but there's so much stuff out there. And from the universal mind, is such a different perspective than this.
Yeah, you're right. There's one of my people, the folks who you see is in the back of the book, my book here. This is a collection of 67 essays that I've written about how to live life with less suffering. And William Baldridge wrote, basically his phrase was echo chamber. There's a big, huge echo chamber, and so I don't speak from the echo chamber. I speak from my experience and my thinking about all of these experiences, the huge range of experiences, these thousands of experiences that I've had this lifetime, never mind, going back 6,000 years of my other lifetimes, but putting all of that thinking together that I've been thinking about for 6,000 lifetimes that I'm consciously aware of. I'm probably been thinking about stuff for millions of years, but 6,000 years that I'm consciously aware of this lifetime. And how do these pieces of the jigsaw puzzle that you're referring to fit together?
Right.
And do they make sense? And when they don't make sense to me, I question that. I don't just parrot what somebody else has said when something doesn't make sense.
Right.
That's the typical thing that you hear in most spiritual circles. And I've kind of moved away from a lot of, I was actually trying to organize a whole group of holistic and spiritual groups to be under one kind of, not an organization, but a network. Back in 1980,
was that for Maharishi?
No, it was me and Pete Rogers and my buddy Pete.
Okay.
Nobody else would step forward out of the group in New England. We were trying to organize this in this New England area. Anyway, but this was 1984, 85. This was like way early on. And so, but I started to realize way back then the disparate and how disparate people's, and I thought, you know what? I'm not here to change people's beliefs about things. I'm not trying to find a common belief system. I want to explain things in the way that I've thought about things and experienced things in a consistent way, not a cognitively dissonant way. There's so many dissonant things. Dissonant means inconsistent thinkings out there. And so I wanted to distill that stuff out. So I just started doing my own thing in that way. that's the kind of, and then, as you said, alluded to, you know, it's created the nonprofits to do it underneath the umbrella of.
Well,
So really, it's the consistency of the thinking that's I think unique to what the way I teach it.
right. Well, this is an opportunity to really make sense of a lot more sense of all of this and to navigate it in a different way. Because when I asked you a question in our meditation class, I said, what's the difference between hypnotherapy and the meditation? And you said hypnotherapy gives you an expanded mind, but meditation gives you your whole mind. And what we're talking about is a perspective of the organization of thought and your life in a whole mind viewpoint.
Yeah, there are degrees, and I never throw water, you know, on the fire of other teachers who are teaching stuff that's helpful. So hypnotherapy may be helpful to certain people. That said, there are degrees to which, well, first of all, so, you know, there's never one size fits all for everybody. So we have the uniqueness of the trillions of minds that exist in the universe, not just on Earth. But you know, get that issue. But also with different techniques, some will help us get out of what I call the 8-inch plastic bucket part of our mind, maybe get 80 inches out. Some will help us get 800 inches out and expand the mind outside the little waking state.
Let's stop a second, because I know exactly what you just said, but I doubt if anyone who hasn't listen. Okay, so basically what we're talking about is that right now your worldview may be restricted to your programming or your sense of your reality. But what Kelvin teaches is a way to get out of that closed space.
Yeah, limited
space, and then access the bigger part of you. And so I thank you. I didn't want to interrupt, but I knew that no one would know what you were
No, it's good to have a translator. It's good to have a translator. Good.
Okay. So let's go back to your experience, because that's what really entices me about learning from you, is that you are speaking from your experiences and you're so confident. Like I know you may not like psychics, but I'm psychic and intuitive. And so a lot of times
I used to do that work. I didn't call myself a psychic.
Yeah, me neither. But I'm claiming it now because I don't know what else to do. But but what I'm saying is, hi Mountain Devil. What I'm saying is that I want to make sure that people understand that what your experiences are is a guide for their experiences, for them to be able to be in that quantum space, which is multidimensional. So could you talk a little bit about afterlife and reincarnation now, so that they can get a feel for you? Okay.
Yeah. So let me, I'll start with the NDE, and I'll just kind of give the short summary of the NDE that relates to your question. Okay. So the NDE that I had when I almost drowned, you got to keep in mind, I had already been meditating for 2 years before I almost drowned. So what does that mean? For those of you who meditate, you know that what that means is that you're already familiar with the fact that your mind and your body are separate. So that's one of the fundamental points that we talk about in the first session of the Afterlife series, is the fact that our mind and our body are separate. Well, back to my NDE, I almost drowned. And when I started going down, I was almost 2 miles out in the ocean. I got pulled up by a rip current off of San Diego. And when I started going down, because I was so physically exhausted trying to swim back in, I saw the surface of the water going like this, farther away from me. And then I left my body for a split second. And it fortunately was only a split second, because I recognized, the reason it was so short is because I recognized that I was out of my body, and I willed myself right back into the body. I just get back in the body. So I went back into the body mentally. You know, my consciousness left my body, and I went right back into, saw my body, went right back into the body, and struggled to the 4 or 5 feet up to the surface. If I had been in a typical near-death experience, those of you who've read or seen YouTubes about other people's near-death experiences, very often they'll last for many seconds and sometimes many minutes, sometimes even longer. These near-death experiences that some people have had. Well, typically they last for minutes on Earth, in Earth time anyway, minutes at least. I would have been 40, 50 feet down. There's no way I would have been able to get back up. So meditation saved my life in that experience. So that was the first, you could say, Kathy, experience of, in a sense, glimpse of afterlife, because my mind body were separate, and then I put my mind back into my body. So I chose to go back in, and it saved my physical, biological life as Kelvin Chin. My afterlife experiences from a reincarnation standpoint started opening up in 1977, just spontaneously, and I started having memories from thousands of years ago. You know, how do you want to course through this?
Any way you want to. I'm so excited.
Yeah. They opened up so I started having memories, but here's the interesting thing about it, and I get into this in great detail in the third session. That's the reincarnation session of the 6-part series. The thing is, I didn't even know it was reincarnation, because you gotta understand, like I already told you, I did not believe in reincarnation. I wasn't into spiritual stuff. I didn't know what spiritual stuff was. And if you would talk to me, Kathy, about reincarnation in 1976, you know, right before I had this experience, I would have thought, yeah, Kathy, okay, great, let's go have lunch. You know, I've been polite with you, but I would have been kind of dismissive. I didn't believe in reincarnation until I had this unusual experience, and then which started in a dream, which I just thought it was a dream. And then my friend, when I started telling him about this dream that I had 6 months, 7 months earlier, he finished the dream. And I said, how'd you know that? He said, because I was the person who found you 2,000 years ago lying in the ditch. And I'm like, what? So I had this external sort of third-party person who I hadn't talked with in 6 or 8 months. Remember, this is 1977. So, you know, a long-distance phone call costs a lot of money. So we weren't even talking on the phone, you know? And he finished my dream that I had 6 or 8 months earlier. What? So that was kind of the first. And then later, about a year later, I had my Crusader memory. And that was when I was just like, you've taken my meditation class. So those who've not taken my meditation class or have taken somebody else's meditation class, you should always, here's a meditation tip for you. You should always, always, always rest after you finish your meditation. You never, ever should get up. If your teacher didn't teach you that, I'm teaching you that now. It'll expand your capacity, and you'll get much more benefits out of your meditation. You should rest for 5 or 10 minutes or longer afterwards. Just lie down or just sit there, keep your eyes closed, and stop meditating. Just rest for a little while. So I was in that mode in 1978, and I was lying down after I meditated with a group of people. And it was as if the TV screen went on in my mind, and all of a sudden I'm seeing myself. I'm walking into. I didn't see myself, but you know how in a dream you kind of see stuff. It was like that, except I wasn't dreaming, and I wasn't sleeping, and I wasn't meditating. I was just lying there with my eyes closed, resting. And I walked into this stone room, and I can still see it now. I mean, big, huge stone blocks on the floor, 2-3 foot stone blocks on the floor. I looked at the walls. The walls were stone. I looked up at the ceiling, stone ceiling, and the ceiling. I scuba dived, so I could tell like height pretty easily. And it's probably about 40 feet, 40, 50 feet, big, huge, way up high ceiling. And I was in a castle. And I walked up to and there was nobody in the room, and all the furniture was pushed to the walls. And except for one piece of furniture in the middle of the room, it was a full-length mirror, big, huge mirror. And I walked up to the mirror and I saw myself, and I went, And I just had this knowingness that it was myself. And I saw myself, I had a white tunic on, a cross, full-length chainmail, reddish hair. I remember explicitly of like red hair. It wasn't brown, black, blonde. It was reddish hair. So red hair is not usual. It's not common in the world, right? I had long reddish hair and a red beard. And I was a crusader. And I was huge. I filled up the mirror. I didn't know how big I was at the time, my measurements, but I knew I could see I was huge. That's just the beginning of that experience. 10 years later, maybe, I had this knowingness that I was 6'5", 230 pounds. Wow. In that lifetime. And in the meantime, I started having smatterings of other lifetimes. So today I probably have memories around 24 lifetimes to go back 6,000 years. So that's just a couple.
Okay, so there are ways that people do lifetime regressions, QHHT, all sorts of processes, but you had this happen instantaneously, right?
Yeah, I've never had a past life regression.
Okay.
Today, never had to. Yeah.
And so, but are you finding after you teach this afterlife and reincarnation class that people start having?
Some people can. I mean, it depends. It's so individual. That's not the goal of the class, although some people come to the class with that objective. They would like to open up more. And so it can help them. The meditation, I think, is primary for helping people open up more, because as you already alluded to earlier, we're expanding ourselves into ourselves more. And then we start opening up more of ourselves to ourselves, which is what these memories are, you know?
Okay. So okay, more questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, and everyone, please, if you have questions for Kelvin, please. Mountain Devil put, "We are spirit, soul, eternal on a journey. It's a wonderful gift." Mm-hmm. So she liked your story. Okay, so one of the questions I have, well, I have lots. I showed you before we came on, I have a whole series of books that I got in college.
Yeah.
And one of the books, this from Yogi Press from 1900, most of the books are from 1904 to 1907. I think this one's from, which is cool. Anyway, there was a book called Reincarnation and the Law of Karma. Mm. And it was about early Christian, which actually most of it evolved out of Judaism, how there was reincarnation in the theology or the storyline, but they took it out because of the divine right of kings. And so I wanted, there's a lot of things like that where you have people come in with these biases from there's over 4,000 religions on the world right now.
Yeah.
So everybody has their paradigm or programming that they've had or that they've accepted. So sure. How do you deal with that when you're teaching afterlife and reincarnation? Do you find that people that are real, that you're able to help them expand out of that?
Yeah, my goal is to help people in whatever way they would like the help. My goal is not to change their belief systems. So I take people with whatever belief system they have, and I tell them to take whatever I say that makes sense and fits with them, and to shelve the rest. And they may sit on the shelf forever, or for a year, or for a month, and then they may take it off the shelf and reconsider and think about it and so forth. They may never take it off the shelf. It doesn't matter to me. My goal is to share information with people, because my experience, and this gets into what we talk about in the 6th session of the series, which is what happens, what really continues after we die. I talk about the eternity of our soul. And so my experience, if we are in fact eternal souls, we have forever, literally forever. to figure things out and to know more about who we are. So for the people you're referring to who may have different belief systems from mine or whatever, it's fine because they are all navigating this thing that we call life, this eternal journey in their own way. I'm not here to it's not my goal and it's not my role and it's not my place to try to change their journey.
Right.
My place is to help them in whatever they want my help. I only help people who want my help. I don't sell what I do.
I understand.
People find me.
Yeah, I understand. And that was a perfect thing to let other people know, because that isn't that's why I said you're not the guru and we're the student, and you're teaching truth. You're teaching your experience. You're putting it into a logical way for anyone else to use the information. So, we're getting some great questions. You ready for some?
Yep.
Okay. So first one's from Kiara. It says, can you walk us through the death experience, what people typically experience, and why we do not need to be afraid? How similar and how different can people's
So I'll work backwards on that question. It's a great question, Kiara. So here's the thing. The last part, how similar and different? Well, first, it could be very, very different. It can be as unique as each individual, which is every individual is unique. So every person's death experience can be very, very different, but there are patterns and there are similarities. And the general pattern is that, first of all, most people die very, very peacefully. And they go and they transition to the other side. What's transitioning? First of all, when you hear me use the word mind, you can substitute the word soul, spirit, consciousness, awareness. To me, they all mean the same thing. Right. I'm not talking about the little 8-inch plastic waking state part of a bucket part of our mind. When I say mind, that is part of our mind, but I'm talking about this big, huge part of our mind too. So that continues, and for most people, it's a very peaceful transition. We're welcomed by more people than you can imagine. Now, first of all, most people are going to think, well, it's going to be my dead grandmother, grandfather, my loved one, or this or that, or friends or whatever who predeceased me. Yes, that's highly likely that they're going to be there to greet you. But are there others? Yeah. People forget how many other lifetimes of friends that you have that you may have forgotten about because you haven't been with them this lifetime. If you've had 10 friends over 100 lifetimes, that's another 1,000 people.
Wow.
You've had more than 10 friends. So anyway, you do the math. So that happens. That's very common. We're welcomed, we're greeted, and they help us transition, because the transitioning, the experience on the other side is very, very similar to this side. To answer this person's Kiara's question, it's very, very similar to this side, but different. It's similar in the sense that our mind continues, so we don't forget who we are. Our individuality, when they say our mind, our individuality, who we are, continues. We can take on any name we want. I mean, I could refer to myself as Kelvin on the other side, Kathy, if I ran into you on the other side. But we might take on different names, but I'm going to recognize your energy. And so I refer to that as we have an identifiable energy pattern. Right. That's the phrase that I use.
Frequency.
Yeah, our frequency, our energy is identifiable. It's unique to us. It's like you have an energy signature almost, right? It's literal. And but okay, there's no physical, biological reality there, on the other side. So it is different. But I mean, it's very similar to this side in a lot of ways, in terms of the uniqueness of each of us still exists and that kind of thing. And we can make choices and we have desires and we can create this and this and this and so forth. It's different. It's similar, but different from a time standpoint. You mentioned about time earlier.
Yeah.
And does time exist on the other side? Yes, it exists. Does it exist in the same way that it exists here? No. So that's when you hear it. This is a conflation. This is where you hear a lot of confusion and dissonant, inconsistent spiritual talk about this from people. People will say, time doesn't exist on the other side. That's because they don't understand what time is. So first of all, you got to understand in English what time is. Time is a measurement of change. That's all it is.
Right.
So if there is change, whether it's on the other side or on planet XYZ, if change exists, then time exists. But
Right.
the subjective experience of time may be very different. That does not mean that time doesn't exist. You could say time doesn't exist on the other side in the exact same way it exists on planet Earth. Yeah, okay, fine. It doesn't feel the same, but it is still a measurement of change.
Right.
And so there's still change that exists on the other side. Time exists.
Perfect.
Right?
Perfect. And that's wonderful. I think that's, I learned that from Roberta Grimes when she was talking. She helped channel a book from a young man who was a snowboarder who died at 20 here in the mountains. And he was a sixth dimensional being, just wanted to come for a little bit and then go back. And he's snowboarding in the sixth dimension.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want on the other side.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then Noelle and Bob are here. So, hi, Noelle. When you reincarnate, you don't have to come back here. In fact, I think we are encouraged not to come back here. What do you think about that?
You could be encouraged by anybody, but you don't have to listen to anybody. So the notion that it's better not to come back here, that's a mistake. That's a bias that whoever may have encouraged you in that way, that's their bias. So you don't have to come back here. You don't have to go anywhere. You can go to a different planet if you wanted to. So you can hang out on the other side for as long as you want to. But you have chosen to come back here. So that's the reality. Now, whether you realize or remember that you chose to be here, and some people are having very, very difficult lifetimes here on planet Earth, and they say, how could I ever choose this? Well, you did. And people don't realize what choice is also. Choice and free. And when I say choice, or that I willed my mind back into my body when I almost drowned and all that, people don't realize how subtle choice is. If you think about your daily life, if you're honest with yourself, you're making a lot of choices that you don't even consider conscious choices.
I see.
Like when you're hungry and you're going to the refrigerator, that's a choice. You're not thinking, oh, I'm hungry, I got to go to the refrigerator. Sometimes you are, that consciously thinking of it, but you're having a desire. Desire is a choice. And I have specific examples of that from people close friends of mine who had NDEs, and it's very clear in their NDE that they didn't choose to come back like, I'm choosing to go back to planet Earth kind of choice, although that can be a choice. But that's a very obvious choosing, right? Example of choosing. But they just had a desire, and boom, they're back in their body. People don't usually think of that as a choice. That is a conscious choice. Wow. And so lots of people are here on planet Earth because they were near the chute. We'll call it the chute, CHUETE, the chute to come back to Earth into a body. And they went, hey, I miss those donuts. Boom. And they're down. they're like, well, wait a minute. You mean I don't get free donuts? I get a job? I got to go work at Amazon in a factory, and I got to clock and to get my donuts? Well, this is how, but I'm serious. I'm serious about this, because that's why I teach what I teach, to show people that they need to be clear about their thinking. People are so unclear about their thinking. I'd say most of the 8 billion people are here on planet Earth for some simple desire like that. I really miss getting drunk. Boom. And then they're down here again. It's like, no, you think about it. It makes logical sense if you you just think about who you've run into in jobs or at the supermarket or whatever. How many people are walking around thinking, geez, I need to plan out my life. No. People are not doing that. They're
barely planning out their grocery list.
They're hardly planning out their grocery list. They're just going through like, what do I feel like eating now? All right. That's what they did with their life before they came into planet Earth.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this is not a punishment place. This is kind of what
Yeah, that's what I was hoping you'd
Noel's
talk
kind of
about.
implying that, and whoever says that to you on the other side has a bias. Now, that may be their truth. And this goes to your point, Kathy, about truths. There is no one truth. That's the point. Is that there are there are perspectives, is what I never use the word truth. I talk about perspectives. And so whoever on the other side may have told Noel that's their perspective. So they could call that their truth. Again, I don't like to use that word because it implies there is some truth, but there's their perspective. And that's their perspective, that's their opinion, and they can have that. Okay. But the issue that I say to Noel and to everybody who gets advice from person on this side or the other side, do you listen to everything the dry cleaner tells you? I mean, the dry cleaner says you really should be, you should really try this whiskey, and you're like not drinking. You don't believe in drink, but your dry cleaner's telling you, no, this whiskey's really important for your life, because it really, you sleep like unbelievable, whatever. And like, you're going to listen to your dry cleaner? Why would you listen to anything that anybody says on the other side? It's the same dry cleaner now who's dead on the other side, who hated being a dry cleaner on this side. Now he or she is dead on the other side going, don't go back to planet Earth. You don't have to go back.
Well, I think I know where Noel and Bob got that information. Was probably so there's so many different people's experiences that have language is difficult to condense feeling into and get universal meaning. So language kind of constricts, and that's where
well, here's the thing.
Interpreting it.
If you want to talk about universal principles, my experience, and again, people can throw this away if they don't believe this. My experience on this side and the other side is that we have free will to make whatever choices we want. And if you have free will to make whatever choices you want, you free will has you can't have exceptions to free will. It's always there. It's like you're not partially pregnant. You're either pregnant or you're not pregnant. So you either have free will or you don't have free will. My experience is that we have free will to make all kinds of choices. That means that the other minds have all kinds of choices to make in terms of interpretation, et cetera, of whether they think you should come back to planet Earth. Look, here's an NDE for you. They illustrate this. Okay. So this guy in San Francisco had this NDE that I heard about. And he has this NDE. He's near-death experience, for those who don't know the acronym, near-death experience. The guy's almost dying, okay?
Okay.
And what happens is he's having this experience on the other side, and it's his guru and an angel who are arguing with each other about whether or not the guy should come back or not. All right. So the angel is saying, with the light being, I'm calling it an angel, but what he said, it was just some being of light, is saying, no, you should come here, blah, 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 because, and it's, it's trying to sell this guy, basically persuade him. I'm using the word sell. I came out of sales and marketing years ago, so I use the phrase sale. So he's trying to persuade him to come over to the other side. And the guru is saying, his dead guru is on the other side, the dead guru, right? His dead guru on the other side saying, no, you need to go back. You have stuff to do. You got to go back and work with the students and blah, 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 blah. Obviously, he came back. But that's an example of the free will minds on the other side, his dead guru and a light being, who are disagreeing about what they would each like. They're
projecting their wishes,
their desires. They're projecting their desires onto him. Okay, making it should.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There's a couple more good questions. Sure. Here we go. Okay. Zana says, did Kelvin learn from each past lifetime remembrance? Any examples that show that lesson for this lifetime?
Huge. Yes. Good question. Thank you for asking that, because my whole thing about these past, well, who cares? It's like a big deal. It's interesting. It's like, what? But to me, it's what's the practical use of them in this lifetime? So what did they tell me and teach me about myself that I can use as Kelvin Chin this lifetime? Right. That's the way I suggest that we look at these things if you ever have experiences of past lives. So yeah, so for example, the one that I talk about, oh, here's my other book. Get to show people my other book. So this book, The Overcoming the Fear of Death, this is my first book. And by the way, this is a non-religious, all my work is non-religious approach. So it's very spiritual, but non-religious. I embrace all the religions and so forth. I take a non-religious approach to my teaching. But in that book, I talk about one of my past life experiences. I didn't want the book to talk about me. I have a lot of stories in that book about other people, friends and family and so forth. But I have one in there about me, one about my past life, which is when I was a slave. I almost died 2,300 years ago. I connected the dots and figured out, I think it was in the Punic Wars, and I was a Carthaginian. Well, I was a slave on a Carthaginian warship. I was actually African, black, very dark, blue-black, very dark skin, as a slave, rowing. Okay, those of you who don't know the history, rowing on one of these warships in the Mediterranean for Carthage. Carthage was even more powerful than Rome. Before ancient Rome became powerful, right. Carthage was the Mediterranean Empire, ruling the whole Mediterranean. So I was a slave, enslaved by the Carthaginians on a warship fighting the Romans, and our ship got blown up. They throw tar on it, throw a torch in or a burning arrow in, and the thing blows up. Okay. So I almost died. My point to this person's question, this great question, is that I willed myself to stay alive in that lifetime, and it taught me the strength and the power of my mind, so that in this lifetime, in 20th and 21st century Kelvin Chin lifetime, I willed myself to stay alive in my career, not physically, biologically alive, but because when I got laid off, I've been laid off 5 times since I was 50 years old. 5 times since 50 years old. Company gets bought by another company. Now I'm on the street, because there's duplicate positions or, different reasons. I was on the street needing to get a new job, and I'm supporting a family of 4 at the time. So very difficult. So I drew from that past life memory of how powerful my mind was when I willed myself to stay alive, floating on a piece of wreckage in the Mediterranean 2,300 years ago. So that's an example.
That's perfect. Okay, lots more questions. You ready? Because we definitely want to still talk about the class.
Go ahead.
But these are fantastic. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so here's another one from Kiara. Who is the being of light that people are welcomed by once they pass through the afterlife tunnel? Is it their higher self?
That's a great question. So it depends on the person. There's not one being of light that greets people. First of all, you got to understand that any being on the other side is a being of light. So when you die, or I die, or your dead grandmother has died already, we're all going to be beings of light, or she's already a being of light. So it could be anybody. So that's why I say this idea the phrase that I use of identifiable energy pattern is an important idea, because when we retain our identity in terms of our energy, you can recognize your grandmother from somebody else. So it depends on it depends. So very often you'll hear people say Jesus greeted me, or if they have an NDE, or whatever, and they'll come back and they'll tell us, or it was God, or it was Buddha, or Muhammad, or whoever, or Archangel Michael, or whatever. It could be any of the above, but It might not be. It's just because the person assumes that the energy of light, the being of light, or beings of light, plural, is that person X, Y, or Z through their belief system. So they filter it.
Right.
So it's hard to tell. I can't tell. It's not, and it's far be it from me to judge them what their experience is. Their experience is their experience, and so we need to honor that, of course. But from an objective standpoint, it's hard to tell unless I was there and I was having the experience with them and saying, and I had a perception of that identifiable energy pattern as Jesus or somebody else, Maharishi, or somebody who I would recognize their energy pattern of, for example. But the bottom line is we are greeted by many, many beings of light on the other side, and it's very comforting. That's the thing. I'm the anti-fear guy. I'm trying to help people relax so that they can live life here more fully and not worry about.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, so another one, and then this from Omar Fiazi, who I love as much as Kiara. I love all these people. Thank you so much for being here. He says, I find it interesting that most people only remember past lives here on Earth and anywhere else. Why is it?
Yeah, I
Why
think
is that?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think most people remember past lives from here. I remember some past lives not from here. So, but I think the answer to the question, also past lives as humans. I remember past life as animals too. So most people are remembering past lives as humans here on planet Earth, and I think the reason is because familiarity. You think about the personality, the mind, how it's made up. And most people are just, why do you keep going to the same store? Why do you keep going to the same gas station? It's just familiarity. It's like, oh yeah, I know that route, blah, blah, blah. Why do you keep going to the same this or that? The familiarity. Is it the best choice? Not necessarily, but the familiarity, it kind of supersedes everything. And I think that's the simple answer. It's not complicated.
Okay. And then how do people hold their belief system in the after human life? I thought at that moment we become all that is.
There's a lot of talk about this, all that is, and that we merge into some ocean, this soup and so forth. But that's completely, I get into that in the 4th session of my Afterlife series, where I talk about that in much greater detail. This whole notion of merging, it's called in spiritual circles, it's called merging with the absolute, the merging in Vedic. It comes out of the Vedic tradition anyway. I get into that in the 4th series, and I talk about where it comes from and so forth, and I explain how it's actually an incorrect thinking, but how it derives from an actual, real, genuine experience that's been misinterpreted for many thousands of years. So we don't merge. If everybody merged, then who are you communicating with on the other side? Because you can't communicate with somebody who's merged, because merge means you lose your individuality. So this is where some people don't understand what the term, they're using inconsistent terminology. Merging and kind of joining with this cosmic ocean of love or God or whatever you want to call it, or going home to being in this cosmic soup thing or whatever you want to call it, that means you have no individuality. That means you have no awareness. You've lost your awareness. So who are the psychics and the mediums all communicating with then?
Right.
It's impossible. You have an impossibility there, okay?
How couldn't it be if everything's happening all at the same time? We didn't get to really do our time and space thing very deep. So you guys have to come to this class to find out. But anyway, and the other thing I want to say about these classes is that you can see how Kelvin and I are talking. That is the way the class is. It is not, it's instructor led with information, but there's a lot of interaction and people get a lot of support. So, and it's not like in some classes where the teacher's calling on you and you're hiding in the back of the room. This is
no test.
So cool.
No quizzes, no no examinations. There's no midterm or final here. No, seriously. I talk for about an hour. In some of the sessions, I might go longer, but the Q&A goes an hour to an hour and a half afterwards, usually.
Right.
And
everyone benefits.
Yeah, I take questions. I take questions. Sometimes I actually have to cut it off because the question, it just like gets too long. But I record all the sessions, like 2.5 hours is like we're okay people. like I've gone 3 on the guy. I got to cut those 3-hour ones back because I got, people are like, oh, really? Anyway, so, but, the questions and answers are longer than even the talk. So that's how interactive it is, to Kathy's point. And I record them all so people miss a session. But the other thing is, people who are live in all the sessions watch the sessions again because they're so dense with information. People don't get everything. And I have people, this is the 13th time I'm doing it. I have people who've taken the session 12 times already. The 6
Yeah, I can see that. I've only taken a few classes, and I take classes every week. I'm a lifelong learner, so that's why I love marketing and sales and all of this, is that I can keep learning because there's always cool new stuff. And I would love to take as many of your classes as I can again, because it goes deeper and deeper and deeper. So the first layer might be the layer of understanding and organization. And then the next would be personalization of that data and make it more accessible. And then the next would be the expansion of that data. So I can see that would be a multiple.
The other thing that happens each class, and there's John and Harpo, and there's a core group of a bunch of people who've taken every single series.
Yeah.
They'll tell you, I get whispers from the other side, and then during a session, and it'll be different. So I'm adding in new material, either from myself to what somebody referred to as my higher self. I don't consider it my higher self anymore. I don't like the words higher. To me, it's me. Once you get familiar more with the vastness of who you are, then you just accept it as you. It's not my higher me and my lower me. So yeah, it's just boom, I'll get, boom, and then, or sometimes it's not from me and it's from others on the other side, new material each session.
Yeah. And everything's in perfection, how it drops in, where someone will make a comment and then you have a learning segment that you wouldn't have normally had, but the question initiated that learning. So that's perfect. So I'm afraid we're going to have to do this again.
Right.
And there were lots more questions. Thank you, everyone in the audience. Brilliant questions.
People can ask me the questions. They can go to my website and just on the
content. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is right now I want to make sure that people know this Afterlife and Reincarnation class is starting soon. So do you want to share a little bit more about that so we can make sure that everybody? I've got the banner going and I've been posting it.
Yeah, that's great. They can click on the banner. It's on there are 2 short 20-minute preview videos on 2 of my websites, either on the Overcoming the Fear of Death website, which is the one that's on the banner there, or my kelvinchin.org website. Either one has, you'll see the Afterlife series on the menu bar, and you'll see a couple of videos there, and they'll explain more about what I talk about and how I teach them in the Afterlife series. The next series is starting May 29th, Sunday, and it's every other weekend, so people can digest. They have a couple of weeks to digest. They can watch the video again of the last class and whatever, the recording of the last class. Each class is live, right? I'm doing it live, but I'm recording them. May 29th, Sunday, 10 a.m. Pacific. So it's 11 Mountain, 12 Central, 1 o'clock Eastern time. And so it fits for the folks in Europe. The people in Australia and in Asia generally do it by watching the recordings. And then they'll send me emails, questions, and I'll answer their questions live the next session. That's usually how I work with my Asian students. Australia and so forth, Asian students for this class. And it's, like I said, every other weekend, every other Sunday. The sessions, I'll just give you the titles of the 6 sessions, but you can go to those websites and check them out more. The first session I call What Happens When We Die. Obviously, all of these 6 sessions, it's the whole thing, the whole series about afterlife, but I've broken them up into topics so we can have focus on those each class. What happens when we die? We talk about it generally, this idea of time, this idea of do we remember who we are, the idea of dead loved ones and so forth. The second session, can we get glimpses of the other side? NDEs, OBEs, STEs. We talk about near-death experiences and other experiences like that. The third session is on reincarnation. The fourth is rewards and punishment, hell, karma, dharma, and sin. So I specifically talk about the idea of punishment, hell, karma, dharma, and sin, and rewards, because that rewards component comes into karma and dharma and stuff. And where does this come from? And how does this fit in to our living our lives? Fifth session, can our friends communicate with us from the other side? Of course they can. We talk about specifics and so forth. And I give you some tips on that, and how to open yourself up more and so forth as well. That the last session is, what part of us continues after our body dies? Is it our mind, soul, something else? We talk about soul plans. We talk about life purpose, the meaning of life in the last session, and the idea of free will and so forth. So that's the series.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds fabulous. I'm so excited about it. And again, you guys, if you are looking for a meditation teacher, I highly recommend Kelvin's meditation class as well as this, because he studied with Maharishi from age 19 on, and was actually traveling for and creating groups for meditation. And his meditation comes from that TM background, but is simplified.
Yeah,
so
simplified, and I've removed all the cultural trappings from the teaching, which allows me to teach across 57 countries now so far, and where there's no cultural trapping to my teaching anymore. I've removed that. So I was with his organization for about 10 years. They went off in a different direction, and that's when I left. The other thing I want to mention is that these two books that you've seen Kathy and me flashing in your face here.
You do the Afterlife one, and I'll do
one. You did that one. You did that one. So these two books, if you're curious about taking the Afterlife series, or if you want to take the Afterlife series, if you're curious, go to the website and you can see more about them, or just ask me questions, send me an email and a contact page. But if you actually do want to take the class, you may want to start reading those books now, because you got a month to kind of do some I give them as kind of, figurative.
Yeah, part of this is part of the homework.
Advanced homework, I could say, to people. So you can start
and it's easy reading. It's as though he's talking to you.
Yeah, and you know what? The reason that is, Kathy, is because that's how I wrote the books.
I know.
It is me talking to you.
I was just trying to show a benefit.
Yeah, no, it is. It's great. It's actually because I am talking. Yeah. So anyway.
Okay. Well, okay. What next? Okay. So we need to complete this wonderful call. We'll have to do another one as usual, because I just can't get enough. But this is the opportunity for everyone that's listening, to realize how powerful you are. So much more than you know. And Kelvin is a great resource for you to be able to experience yourself and your divinity, and have a happier, healthier, more powerful existence here.
Yeah, this is to me, if I distill down to one sentence what my objective is in all of my teaching, if I can help people expand their conscious capacity of their mind and clarify and help their thinking be more clear and consistent, then even if they forget everything, also all the content of my classes, if I've helped their consciousness in that way, I have helped them for eternity, because they take that same consciousness with them and they develop more and more and more and more and more as they keep going. That's my objective.
Perfect. And it's fabulous and fun. This is not difficult to do, and you'll find yourself doing it all the time.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kelvin.
Yep,
Love
very
you
welcome.
very much.
Good
Thank
to
you.
be
And
here.
thank you, everyone, for being
Yeah.
here. Wonderful discussion.
Thanks for great questions. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Bye-bye.